The financial aid papers never even reached the table. Before I could finish speaking, my father crushed them in his hand and tossed them into the trash like they were nothing more than unwanted mail. He didn't look upset. He looked uninterested. He leaned back in his leather chair, the room completely silent except for the soft creak of the seat. Then he said something that would change my life forever. "Fiona, you're no longer worth investing in," he said in a flat, businesslike tone, as if he were reading numbers from a report. I just stood there. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply watched as he opened his drawer, took out his checkbook, removed the cap from his pen, and calmly wrote a check for $5,000. But it wasn't for my education. It was for my twin sister Bianca, a security deposit for a luxury apartment. "She needs the right environment to succeed," he added without even looking at me. He slid the check across the polished desk toward the empty chair, not even bothering to hand it to me directly. It was like I wasn't important enough to deserve eye contact. "You're on your own now," he said. "Figure it out." Before I share how this so-called bad investment became his biggest regret, leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, and have you ever felt ignored or underestimated by your own family? I didn't slam the door. Slamming doors is for people who still want attention, for people who hope noise might change something. Instead, I closed the heavy wooden door quietly. The soft click sounded almost like a deep breath. I didn't turn around. I didn't look back at my father. I didn't even glance at the check meant for Bianca. I walked upstairs to my bedroom, the smallest room in the house, a place that never truly felt like home. It felt more like extra storage space for someone who didn't really belong. Most people in my situation would have started packing right away. They would have grabbed a suitcase and rushed to leave. Some people would have grabbed clothes, family photos, or maybe an old teddy bear. Little reminders of the life they were leaving behind. I didn't touch any of that. Instead, I went straight to the air vent under my desk. I pulled it open and carefully slid out a waterproof, fire-resistant box I had hidden there 3 years earlier. Inside wasn't a diary. It held 2 high-capacity external drives and an encrypted laptop my father had no idea existed. You see, Robert believed he was kicking out a helpless 22-year-old with no money and a useless degree. He thought he was cutting off someone who depended on him. What he didn't realize was this. While Bianca spent years building her online image, I spent those same years building real skills. I was learning how to understand complex financial systems and uncover what most people never notice. My name is Fiona, and I'm not just a college graduate. I'm a certified forensic financial analyst. I don't just read reports. I study the hidden details inside the numbers, the small gaps where powerful people try to hide the truth. I sat down on the floor, holding the box in my hands, completely focused. I sat on the floor, the rough carpet pressing against my legs, and opened the laptop. I didn't cry. Tears make your vision blurry, and I needed my mind sharp and focused. One last time, I connected to the house network. My father's office server was protected by an expensive security system. It cost more than my entire 4 years of college. On paper, it was supposed to be impossible to break into. But overconfidence always creates weak spots. He used the same password for his private server that he used for his country club account. One quick move. The screen changed from red to green. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about tuition anymore. That problem was too small. I wasn't looking for help. I was looking for control. I started copying his full financial history. Tax records, overseas transfers, and consulting payments that didn't line up with real work. The loading bar slowly moved forward. 10%, 20%, and it kept going. The only sound I could feel was my own heartbeat. Downstairs, I heard champagne glasses clinking. They were celebrating Bianca's new apartment, celebrating what they believed was a fresh start. Laughing like nothing had happened. I let them enjoy it. Laughter makes people careless. It lowers their guard. While they were cheering, I was quietly saving the information that would change everything. The transfer finished with a soft blink on the screen. I unplugged the drive, placed it in my backpack, and stood up. I left my clothes in the closet. I left the bed untouched. I left the photos hanging on the wall. I took only what truly mattered, the data. As I walked down the stairs, I felt a strange, cold calm in my chest. It wasn't happiness, but it was confidence. My father had called me worthless. He was about to learn that when someone is pushed aside, they don't disappear. They come back stronger. I stepped out the front door, past the luxury cars in the driveway, and walked into the cool night air. And I didn't look back. I didn't know where I would sleep that night. But I knew one thing. I was carrying his entire digital world in my backpack. What happened wasn't a sudden fight. It didn't begin when he threw those papers away. It began the moment I walked out of that house. And to understand why I didn't hesitate to take that data, you need to know this was never just about tuition. Tuition was only the last bill in a long history of unfair treatment. The real problem started 6 months earlier, right there in the same driveway I had just left behind. It was a Tuesday morning. I was on my way to work at the library. I walked the full length of the driveway because my father refused to let me park my old, worn-out car next to his luxury vehicle. But that morning, I couldn't even walk through. The driveway was blocked. A brand-new pearl-white sports car sat shining in the sunlight. A bright red ribbon was stretched across the hood like a gift on display. Bianca was already sitting inside, adjusting the mirror, fixing her hair, and checking her reflection with a smile. She wasn't getting ready for class. She looked more like a social media star preparing for a photo shoot. My father stood beside the driver's door smiling with a level of pride I had never seen directed at me. He admired that car the way someone admires a perfect achievement. I stopped walking. I knew the price of that vehicle, and I also knew what my father always said about our family finances, how money was tight whenever I asked for help with textbooks. So I asked calmly, "Dad, where did the money for this come from?" He turned toward me, his smile still there, but now it felt forced and dismissive. "It came from the estate account," he said, "your grandmother's trust." It felt like all the air left my chest. That money was meant for our education, for both of us. It was supposed to protect our future, and he had used it to buy a luxury car. "That money was for college," I said, my voice shaking. "Our future?" He laughed. It was quick and cold. "You need to understand the difference between spending money and building value," he said. "Bianca is value. She's out there meeting people and creating opportunities. She represents this family." Then he looked me up and down, noticing my worn coat and old boots. "You're just support," he added. "You don't bring returns." That was the moment everything became clear. He didn't see us as daughters. He saw us as assets. Bianca was the polished product he wanted to show the world. Perfect, promoted, and placed in the spotlight to attract attention and status. And I was treated like forgotten stock in the back room. Ignored, unappreciated, only seen as a cost, never as potential. I stood there in the driveway as Bianca started the engine. She didn't even look at me. She just pressed the gas and smiled at her reflection. She laughed, waved at Dad, and sped out of the driveway, the tires making a sharp sound against the road. My father watched her leave with a satisfied smile. Then he turned around and walked back into the house without saying a single word to me. I was left standing there. I walked 2 miles to the bus stop in the rain. He thought he was putting me in my place. He believed he was showing me why I deserved nothing. But standing under that bus shelter, Watching rain drip from the roof, I realized something he never understood. If I was stuck in the background, if I was treated like support staff, then I was also the one who knew how everything worked behind the scenes. You don't ignore the person who manages the numbers. You don't underestimate the one who sees where money really goes. Back in the present, the cold night air hit my face. I tightened the straps of my backpack. It felt heavy, not just with data, but with secrets. For years, he treated me like a problem, like something to be reduced and pushed aside. And he forgot one important thing. He forgot something important. When someone is treated like a burden long enough, that burden can turn into a serious problem, and problems don't stay hidden forever. I stepped off the sidewalk and called a taxi. I wasn't taking the bus that night. I had work to do. The message wasn't an invitation. It was a command. Family dinner, 7 o'clock. Don't be late if you want your belongings. I arrived at exactly 6:59. The dining room looked staged, like a scene from a movie. Crystal glasses lined the table. Polished silverware reflected the light. A vase of white lilies sat in the center, filling the room with a heavy, uncomfortable scent. My mother, Susan, was already seated, nervously adjusting her napkin. Bianca was there too. Her phone was propped up against a glass, a small red light blinking on the screen. She wasn't just having dinner. She was streaming it live. "Well, look who decided to rejoin society," Bianca said sweetly to her audience, turning the camera toward me. "The runaway is back." My father sat at the head of the table. He didn't stand to greet me. He simply pointed at the plate in front of my chair. A small, unimpressive portion sat there, waiting. In front of me was a small serving of dry chicken and plain vegetables. It was clearly less than what everyone else had been given. My father looked at me and said, "We're doing this for your own good, Fiona. One day you'll thank us. Cutting you off is the best way to build character. Think of it as a favor." My mother poured herself a large glass of wine and nodded. "We're teaching you how to be strong," she said. "Bianca needs our support because she has a public image to protect. You, on the other hand, need to learn how to survive without attention." I picked up my fork, keeping my face calm. "Thank you for the lesson," I replied. My voice was steady. Not grateful enough for them, not angry enough to satisfy them either. Bianca laughed softly while checking her screen. "Can you believe this, everyone? She's so unappreciative," she said to her followers. My father cleared his throat. He reached under the table and pulled out a thick envelope. Then he slid it across the table, stopping it just short of my plate. "Since you're officially independent," he continued casually, "we just need to take care of a few small details." He leaned forward. "Your grandmother opened a small custodial account for you when you were born. It only has a few $100s left. I want to close it to avoid extra fees. Sign this form to move the balance into the family trust, and we'll consider your living expenses settled." A custodial account. I opened the folder. It wasn't a few $100s. From what I had already seen in his records, I knew the real balance was over $400,000. Money he had quietly moved there over the years to keep it off official reports, labeling it as family gifts. He assumed I wouldn't check the details. He believed I would sign quickly just to leave the room. I picked up the pen and carefully read the document. On the surface, it looked like a basic ownership transfer form. But my father had made a serious mistake. Trying to make everything look clean for his own financial reviews, he had included the original account information. At the bottom of the page, under Source of Funds, I saw it clearly. Consulting Revenue, Omega Partners. There it was, printed in plain sight. He wasn't asking me to sign a simple form. He was asking me to sign proof. This document connected the money in my name directly to the shell company he used to move hidden payments. If I signed it, I wouldn't just be approving a transfer. I would be creating a clear paper trail. a trail that linked him to financial wrongdoing. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. "No problem at all," I replied calmly. "I was just impressed by how detailed your paperwork is." Then I signed my name. Slow, clean, confident. I slid the folder back across the table. He grabbed it quickly, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. He believed he had just protected his future. What he didn't realize was that he had just given me the strongest piece of evidence I could ever ask for. "Good," he said, slipping the papers into his jacket. "Now finish your food. You can't afford to waste anything anymore." I lifted my fork and took a bite, and I smiled on the inside. I swallowed the dry chicken. Somehow, it tasted like success. The next morning, I stood in front of the Vance & Associates building, a massive glass tower that cut into the sky. It was the complete opposite of my father's dark wood-filled office. This was where real power operated, and Professor Vance was at the center of it all. He wasn't just another executive. He was my father's biggest corporate rival, the man responsible for reviewing the major merger my father's company was desperate to finalize. I walked into the lobby wearing the only suit I owned, a charcoal gray outfit I had bought years ago for a college mock trial. I didn't have an appointment. I didn't have a resume. All I had was one thick folder and a level of focus that comes from having nothing left to lose. The receptionist tried to stop me. "Professor Vance is booked all day," she said. "You can leave a business card." "I don't have a card," I replied calmly, placing the folder on the marble counter. "But please tell him this file contains information that directly affects the merger he's reviewing. The main reason your audit of Omega Partners is about to fall apart." 3 minutes later, I was sitting inside a corner office that smelled like fresh coffee and quiet authority. Professor Vance stood near the window, flipping through the printed pages I had pulled from my father's server. He stopped on the 4th page. "This looks like a simple payout mismatch," he said calmly. "Probably a rounding issue." "It's not," I replied. "It's a pattern. Check the timestamps. Every transfer ends with the same numbers. That's not random. That's a routing code tied to a hidden account." That's when he finally looked at me. Not with doubt. With interest. Like someone evaluating rare potential. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm the person who knows where the missing money is going," I said. "And I'm here because I want a job." He closed the folder slowly. "You start Monday," he said. "Junior analyst. Don't make me regret this." He never did. For the next 3 months, I spent months practically living in that office. I arrived before everyone else. I left long after the lights were turned off. I studied data nonstop. I tracked hidden companies across multiple countries. I created a detailed financial trail that exposed how money was being moved and hidden. But through all of it, my main focus never changed: the custodial account. 2 days before graduation, late at night, I finally had the access I needed. Using login details I had gathered months earlier, I entered the secure banking system. My heart was pounding. This was the moment everything depended on. I typed in the account number and pressed enter. The screen flashed red. Account closed. For a second, panic hit. But I forced myself to slow down and think clearly. I dug deeper into the system logs and found the truth. There was a transfer scheduled for the next day. He hadn't taken the money yet. It was sitting in holding status, still legally connected to my custodial account. And at midnight on my 21st birthday, that account officially became mine. Exactly at 12 a.m., I submitted a legal reclamation request and I redirected $450,000 into a private trust. That was the turning point. The next morning, I walked across the graduation stage as valedictorian. As the audience applauded, I locked eyes with the same man who once called me worthless. In that moment, he realized something important. I wasn't just his daughter anymore. I was the one who understood his numbers. Outside the hall, he rushed toward me and grabbed my arm, demanding the money. He claimed I owed him for everything he had done while raising me. I calmly opened my phone and showed him the account. Empty. The custodial control had expired at midnight. Legally, every dollar now belonged to me, and if he tried to fight it, he would have to explain where that money originally came from, something he definitely didn't want to do. In the background, emergency vehicles could be heard nearby as news of corporate investigations spread. His business world was falling apart piece by piece. For years, he believed he could hide questionable money and never face consequences. He was wrong.